The next time I could see, I was floating in the air of a hospital room. I watched as my mother, her face a mask of fury, ended a call, then turned around, her expression melting into one of blissful joy as she carefully placed rows of candles on Chloe Shen's birthday cake. "Chloe, happy birthday, sweetie." At her words, a bit of color finally returned to Chloe's face, a face that was perpetually pale and frail from her long battle with leukemia. Today, she wasn't in a hospital gown. She was wearing a small cocktail dress my mother had bought especially for her, a crystal tiara that my boyfriend, Leo, had painstakingly chosen perched on her head. She closed her eyes and made a wish. Only after the little ceremony was over did my father whisper in my mother's ear, "Where's Ava?" "She died the moment my name was mentioned." My mother's face went dark. My dad immediately fell silent, walking over to cut the cake for Chloe. He was always like that. The second my mother got angry, he would swallow whatever he was about to say and pretend nothing had happened. I remember the year I graduated from middle school. I was supposed to take my level 10 piano exam. The travel, the dress, the exam fee, it all added up to almost $2,000. Back then, Mom spent all day at the hospital with Chloe, so I could only beg my dad. Dad said he didn't have the money and needed to talk to Mom, so he took me to the hospital. The moment he opened his mouth, my mother cut him off, her voice sharp. "Chloe is in this state, and you're still thinking about piano exams? Do the two of you have any conscience at all?" "I don't have any money." Dad stood before Mom like a deer in headlights, not daring to say another word. It wasn't until we were out of the room that he whispered an explanation to me. "Chloe's really sick, Ava. All our money is going to her treatment. There's nothing left. We'll talk about the exam some other time." The very next day, because Chloe mentioned the patient in the next bed was a little noisy, my mom moved her into a private VIP suite. My piano exam was never mentioned again. After blowing out her candles and making her wish, Chloe brought me up casually. "Ava always celebrates my birthday with me. How come she's not here yet?" My mother pursed her lips and said nothing. My dad shrank into himself. The only one who spoke was Leo, who sighed with impatience. "I told her to take 2 days off and come back early. Is that stupid job of hers more important than Chloe's 27th birthday?" That's right. The boyfriend I had been with for 7 years no longer took my side after meeting Chloe. He had even dragged me through dozens of department stores, spending 2 months' salary just to find the most unique crystal tiara for Chloe. When he was paying, the sales clerk looked at me with envy. "A boyfriend who gives you his time and his money? Where do you find one of those these days?" I could only manage an awkward smile. Sometimes I wondered, was Leo my boyfriend or Chloe's? Leo caught the last Amtrak train back to the city where we worked. Before he left, my dad pulled him aside outside the hospital room. "If you see Ava, tell her to stop making her mother angry. Also, tell her not to be so dutiful. She shouldn't send her entire paycheck home every month. She's a young woman. It's not right for her to be dressed in rags all the time." I knew why my dad said that. I rarely posted on social media and hated selfies. The only exception was a group photo from a department dinner last week. My manager had made it a mandatory directive. Everyone had to share it to show team spirit. In that group shot, I was wearing a hoodie I'd bought 5 years ago. I'd worn it so much that a hole had frayed open at the cuff. The manager suddenly announced we were taking a picture, so I hastily rolled up my sleeves. It wasn't until the photo was posted that I realized rolling them up only made the hole more obvious. You can't retake a group photo of dozens of people just for one person. I had to swallow my pride and repost it. Thankfully, I don't have many friends, and no one looks that closely. The only person who noticed was my dad, who sent me a text that night. "Ava, when you dress like that, people who don't know us will think we're abusing you." I forget how I replied. I just remember shamefully hiding that hoodie at the very bottom of a storage bin. I couldn't bring myself to throw it away. My entire salary, after essential expenses like rent and food, was wired to my mother. So I never dared to buy new clothes, and I never dared to take a sick day. all because Chloe's hospitalization cost a lot of money. My mother said it was a debt I owed her, a debt I had to repay. I saw Leo visibly flinch at my father's words. "You're saying Ava sends her entire salary home every month?" My dad glanced back into the hospital room. "Chloe's medical bills are huge. Our salaries don't even come close to covering them." In reality, it wasn't just Chloe's medical bills. It was her clothes, her skincare, her makeup. She always picked the best of everything. Even with my salary, supporting her was a stretch. But my mother never flinched at the expense. She always said, "It's what we should do for Chloe." Leo's head dropped, lost in thought for a moment. I knew what he was thinking. He was thinking, no wonder every time I talked to Ava about getting a mortgage for a condo, she always dodged the subject. She didn't have a penny to her name, but really, he should have seen it. Every month after payday, I would make a beeline for the bank. The clothes I wore were always years out of season. Even when we went out for ramen, I would only dare to order the plainest vegetable broth. It's just that as my boyfriend, he never paid attention to those details. He always subconsciously assumed that I wasn't serious about building a life with him, that I wouldn't even buy a home with him. Perhaps out of guilt, Leo tried calling me several times on his way back, but none of the calls went through. After a few attempts, he gave up. Just as he was about to lock his screen, a news alert popped up. A massive pileup on I-95 had resulted in 2 fatalities and 7 injuries. I saw him try to click on it, but the train entered a long tunnel and the signal died. Staring at the endlessly loading webpage, Leo wearily put his phone down. I remember the first time I met Leo. It was at a company mixer. I spent the whole time with my head down, sipping water, partly because I'm not good at socializing, but mostly because I wasn't thirsty at all. My mother had just called, demanding money for Chloe's treatment again. I was so worn down by her nagging that I just transferred the money. After I did, I checked my account. I had $1.23 left. I bought 2 bread rolls, one for breakfast, one for lunch. For dinner, I'd have to fill up on water. But I was getting unbearably hungry. I already had low blood sugar, and now my vision was starting to double. I instinctively tried to stand up. I needed to eat now, whether that meant borrowing money or shamelessly asking someone for food, but my legs wouldn't obey. The moment I stood, they gave out. I saw the world rush upwards. Unexpectedly, I didn't hit the cold floor. I was caught in a warm embrace. "Hey, miss, are you okay?" His voice came from above me, but it sent a tingling, buzzing warmth through my ears. No guy had ever spoken to me like that before. They only ever said, "Ava, make me a copy of this." "Ava, you're on the PowerPoint for tomorrow." "Ava, grab me lunch while you're out, will you?" A lifetime of habit made it impossible for me to refuse anyone. The consequence was that they just took more and more. I had become the office doormat, someone everyone felt they could step on. But now, here was someone this handsome, this gentle, holding me and talking to me. I thought maybe I was dreaming. Unfortunately, the romantic scene was interrupted by my stomach. Grumble, grumble, it was completely beyond my control, but Leo just smiled. "You're already so slim, you don't need to diet." Then, he produced a chocolate bar from somewhere and placed it in my hand. After that day, Leo and I exchanged numbers. He would ask me out to dinner, and when we parted, he never forgot to hand me a chocolate bar. He said he'd never seen a girl devour a chocolate bar so ferociously. I saved every chocolate bar he gave me. When I filled a small jar, I got a bigger one. When the big jar was full, I switched to a tin box. I've always been frugal, but I couldn't bring myself to open any of them, even after they expired. On New Year's Eve, Leo asked me out again. I was just making a wish for myself. "Leo, I want to be with you forever." Somehow, he heard me. "I heard that," he said, a mischievous grin on his face. "I heard you say you want to be with me forever." Leo cupped my face in his hands and planted a deep kiss on my forehead. "Ava Jiang, I like you. Will you be my girlfriend?" That was the happiest day I'd had since I was 10 years old. But in the end, nothing that was mine would ever truly stay mine. Not my parents, and not Leo either. The first time I brought him home for the holidays, he met Chloe. Chloe's eyes were bright and sparkling, as beautiful as stars. She stared at Leo and walked over, intending to shake his hand. But somehow, she stumbled right into his arms. Leo held her and didn't let go for a long moment, a flash of pity in his eyes. In that instant, I felt distinctly that I had lost something. Just like on my 10th birthday, a feeling that was crystal clear, yet utterly helpless. When I floated back home, I saw the same news report playing on the TV. But my mom and dad weren't really watching. They were locked in a tense, awkward standoff. Of course, it was my dad who broke first. If you want to do the transplant for Chloe, then do it. But let's be clear, after all these years of treatment, I've given you my entire salary, we've sold the house. I can't produce a single cent of that $800,000 for the surgery. If you want to do it, you'll have to figure it out yourself. My mother's face was grim. After a long silence, she said, I know our situation, but this is what we owe Chloe. I've already thought of a plan. I'll have Ava Jiang take out loans. If she applies at enough banks, we can piece together the $800,000. I don't know when it started, but my mother always used my full name, as if showing me even a sliver of warmth would be a betrayal to her brother's family. Because my aunt and uncle died in a car crash on their way to my 10th birthday party. I remember my uncle always liked to drink. Sometimes he'd even hold out his glass and ask if I wanted a sip. My aunt would playfully slap his shoulder. Stop being a bad influence on Ava. The sole survivor of that crash was Chloe. From that day on, Chloe came to live with us. My room was given to her, my most beloved toys became hers, and my mother never called me Ava again. Instead, it was Ava Jiang, ungrateful child, jinx, murderer, and so on. It only got worse after Chloe was diagnosed with leukemia. My mother even grabbed me by the throat once, demanding to know why it couldn't have been me who got leukemia. I knew what she meant. If I were the one with leukemia, then her precious Chloe wouldn't have to suffer. She wouldn't have to exhaust herself running between home and the hospital. She could have just thrown me in some forgotten corner to die. After all, on my 10th birthday, she had already wished I was dead. Thinking about it now, I can't help but feel a sense of karmic justice. It was my retribution. 15 years ago, my aunt and uncle died in a car crash coming to my birthday. 15 years later, I died in the same way, rushing to Chloe's birthday. I couldn't wait for my mother to learn the truth, because then my sins would finally be washed clean. I was so tired of being hated by my own mother, of being flayed alive by her glares, of being bound by her words, forced to spend the rest of my life atoning for the monstrous sins she described. What had I even done wrong? I just had a birthday. After my mother spoke, my father opened his mouth, a futile gesture. But like every time before, he said nothing in the end. Probably because she needed me to take out loans, my mother started calling my phone frequently again, but it never connected. Furious and frustrated, she sent me a dozen voice messages. I floated beside her and listened. It was nothing but vicious insults and complaints, ending, predictably, with, "This is what you owe Chloe." Even without a physical body, I couldn't help but rub my ears. I'd been hearing that sentence for 15 years. At first, I was scared. Then I resisted. Then I became numb. Finally, I accepted it. I felt like I was trapped in a loop created by that sentence. Every time I wanted to fight back, to escape, I would be caught by those words. I even started to believe that I really did owe Chloe. But now I was dead, and the loop had vanished. Hearing that sentence again, I only felt the irony. I wanted to bang a gong next to my mother's ear and shout, "Ava Jiang is dead, she doesn't owe you anything anymore." But I couldn't. I could only watch quietly as my mother vented her rage through voice messages, then blocked all of my contact information. Blocking me herself wasn't enough. She snatched my dad's phone and blocked me on his too. She was always like this. After every fight, she would block me and wait for me to come crawling back, begging for forgiveness. She probably thought that because she was my mother, I could never escape her grasp. I had clashed with her over Chloe before. The worst fight we ever had, I refused to answer her calls, no matter how many times she rang. The reason was that she had taken the college tuition I had painstakingly saved up and used it to buy Chloe a new phone. While I was still using a cheap flip phone that cost less than $20, Chloe was already on the latest iPhone. When I saw my bank balance, the result of a whole summer of hard work, drop to zero, I couldn't contain my rage any longer. I screamed at my mother, demanding to know why she did it. She felt no guilt whatsoever. I told you long ago, once you turn 18, you have to spit back every penny I've spent on you. Chloe is stuck in a hospital room all day. She can't even go to college, but you can. Why should you? Let's see how you go to college without this money. My mind exploded. I could hardly believe that the cold, heartless woman on the other end of the phone was my mother. I broke down, sobbing. Why are you doing this to me? Am I not your daughter? Why are you treating me like this? My mother just scoffed. I don't have a murderer for a daughter. I regret ever giving birth to you. You should be the one to die. You should have died a long time ago. All my anger dissolved into humiliation and despair. She was still on the other end, cursing me as if I were her mortal enemy. I took a deep breath and with all my strength pressed the end call button. The good thing about a flip phone was that she could only contact me by calling. So as long as I didn't answer, I wouldn't have to hear those hurtful words. Perhaps my rebellion had thoroughly enraged her. She started calling and texting me day and night, but I didn't answer a single call or reply to a single text. With the summer ending, I had to hurry and find another part-time job. Otherwise, I really wouldn't be able to go to college. During that time, I worked 3 jobs a day, gave myself stomach problems from the stress, and had to swallow my pride and borrow from high school classmates. I finally scraped together enough for tuition just before the semester started. Gradually, my anger subsided. I thought, she is my mother after all. Before I got on the train, I gave in and called her. She didn't answer. At first, I thought she was still angry and didn't want to talk to me, so I sent her a text. Still no reply. I started to panic, calling her every so often. None of them went through. I started calling my dad. But this time, his phone was unreachable too. I was getting desperate. I got off the train at a stop midway and begged the conductor to change my ticket for a return trip. Rushing back, I finally reached home in the dead of night. I pounded on the door, but there was no answer. The noise eventually woke the neighbors, who came out in their pajamas to yell at me. For God's sake, what's all the racket in the middle of the night? By then, I was a complete mess. I dropped to my knees in front of the neighbor. Please, can you tell me where my parents are? I can't reach them. I'm so worried something happened to them. The neighbor was so startled he nearly fell over. It was his wife who came out, frowning as she tried to recall. No way. I saw your mom cooking around dinner time. Said she was taking it to the hospital for your cousin. The commotion in the hallway drew out more neighbors, who all confirmed they had seen my parents that evening. Just as I was completely bewildered, our door opened and my dad stepped out. The neighbors were immediately indignant. What's wrong with you people? Not answering your own daughter's calls, not answering the door. Is there something wrong with your family? My dad was busy apologizing to them, but he shot me a glare, probably blaming me for making a scene. The stone in my chest finally lifted. I asked, my face grimacing, Dad, why didn't you answer your phones? Just then, my mom walked out, a smug look of triumph on her face. She didn't say a word, but her expression screamed victory. I later found out that after I didn't answer her calls, my mother had blocked my number. And she'd done the same on my dad's phone, all to make me bow my head. Too bad for her. This time, she would be waiting forever for my apology. The pressure cooker's valve began to hiss and sputter. It was the chicken soup my mother was making specially for Chloe. To cater to a patient's palate and dietary needs, my mother would go to the market early in the morning to buy a fresh, free-range chicken, then cook it in the pressure cooker until the meat was completely tender. She cheerfully carried the thermal container to the hospital. Although Chloe had leukemia, she put on a full face of exquisite makeup every day, wore a pretty dress, and then snapped a few pictures or short videos to upload to her social media accounts. She documented her fight against the disease, cultivating the persona of an optimistic, strong, and brave little princess. Because of her special situation and her perpetually flawless face, her account attracted a lot of followers. When our family was at its most desperate, on the verge of selling our house to pay for her treatments, I once kindly suggested that she could use her account to appeal for donations. She flatly refused. Her reason was, asking people for money is no different from being a beggar. Do you want everyone to look down on me? At the time, I was juggling college and 3 part-time jobs, working day and night to cover my own tuition and living expenses, exhausted as a dog every single day. But Chloe wasn't even willing to let compassionate strangers donate, terrified that her carefully crafted image of a brave, strong, and refined princess would crumble. I exploded in anger. My family is about to sell the house for you, and you can't even let go of that little bit of pride. Are you out of your mind? Chloe's temper flared too, and she stared at me coldly. Your family owes me this. You deserve it. The next moment, however, her expression shifted to one of tearful fragility, and she looked at me pitifully. Ava, I know I've been a burden to you all. I should just go die. With that, she started to climb onto the windowsill. It was only then that I realized my mother had walked in at some point. She rushed forward like a madwoman and pulled Chloe down. After confirming her precious niece was unharmed, she slapped me hard across the face, cursing me to die with the most venomous words imaginable. I ran downstairs, my face burning hot. The hospital entrance opened onto a major road. At that moment, I stood in the middle of the street, thinking, fine, I'll just go die. The roar of traffic and the blare of horns washed over me like a tidal wave. A burly truck driver stuck his head out and yelled at me, if you want to die, do it somewhere else. I sheepishly retreated to the sidewalk. In that moment, I knew for certain that I was afraid of death. Who isn't? As long as you're human, you want to live, right? Unless there's no hope left in living. Usually, when my mom brought her chicken soup, Chloe was always delighted and ate with relish. But today, she stopped after one sip, staring at my mother with a worried frown. Auntie, when can we do the bone marrow transplant? It's not easy to find a match. If we don't lock it in soon, I'm afraid we'll lose the chance. My mother's hand, holding the soup bowl, froze. After a long moment, she said faintly, Ava Jiang isn't answering her phone. Though the sentence seemed to come out of nowhere, Chloe understood immediately. I thought Ava might not be willing to take out such a big loan for me, but I never thought she wouldn't even answer the phone. It suddenly dawned on me. The idea of me taking out loans to pay for the transplant was very likely Chloe's. My mother, with her limited worldview, probably wouldn't have thought of something like that. Seeing Chloe on the verge of tears, my mother panicked and quickly tried to soothe her. There has to be another way. We'll find the money somehow. Chloe's large eyes fixed on my mother, her lips twisting into a strained smile. Auntie, this is my only hope. You will help me, won't you? My mother pledged her loyalty without hesitation. Of course. No matter what, I will get you cured. For some reason, I saw a flicker of an emotion I couldn't quite decipher hidden in Chloe's smile. Perhaps to comfort Chloe, my mother stayed at the hospital exceptionally late that day. By the time she got home, my father was already in bed. The movement of her getting in woke him up, and he mumbled, "Why so late?" My mother sighed and began pouring out her troubles to my dad. She had hoped for some comfort, but my dad remained silent. Just as she was about to turn off the light, my dad spoke softly. If you were half as good to Ava as you are to Chloe, she wouldn't be ignoring your calls. My mother suddenly erupted. Not good enough to her? She's a murderer. I didn't send her to prison. I fed her. I clothed her. What have I done wrong by her? My dad, for once, lost his temper too. Will you ever let it go? That car crash was an accident. How does that make Ava a murderer? Send her to prison? Go ask the police if they'd even open a case. I think you've lost your mind. As if he'd struck a nerve, my mother violently threw off the covers and stomped around barefoot on the cold floor. Ava Jiang is a murderer. If it wasn't for her birthday, my brother and sister-in-law wouldn't have died. Chloe wouldn't have become an orphan. It's all Ava Jiang's fault. My dad was silenced. Unable to stay in the room any longer, He went out to the balcony to smoke. My mother, the victor of the argument, slumped to the floor in defeat. Her eyes unconsciously drifted to a photo frame tucked away in the corner of the wardrobe. It was the only photo of the three of us, me, Mom, and Dad, that remained in this house. In the picture, I was very young, maybe 5 or 6, sitting happily in my mother's lap, making a funny face at my dad. Before I turned 10, my mother was always very good to me. She was like any other devoted mother, taking care of my every need. She would wish me good night every evening, hold my hand when we crossed the street, and if I fell, she would rush to my side, her eyes tearing up as she asked if it hurt. Back then, I thought my mom was the best mother in the world, but all of that came to an abrupt end after my 10th birthday. I have wished countless times that I could go back to before I was 10. I craved my mother's love so desperately. She was the one who carried me for 10 months, who brought me into this world, my first connection to it. My love for her was almost unconditional, and I always believed that one day my mother would forgive me. She would love me again like she used to and treat me as her precious child. Every time I saw that photo frame in the corner of the wardrobe, I thought the same thing. Mom must still love me. Otherwise, why would she tear up all the other photos in the house but leave this one? She must feel too guilty, but one day, she'll forgive me. She's my mother. How could a mother not love her own child? It's impossible for a mother not to love her child. I told myself this over and over, only to be pushed into the abyss of despair by her own hands, time and time again. Until the very last second before I died, I still wanted to call out for my mother to save me, but she didn't even let me finish my sentence before telling me to go die. I guess I will never have my mother's love again, but what does it matter? I'm already dead anyway. I suddenly wanted to rush over and smash that photo frame. And I did, but I could only watch helplessly as my hand passed right through it. I couldn't do anything at all. I'm so useless. I felt like I was crying, but when I reached up to my face, I couldn't feel a single tear. Souls can't cry, I guess. Suddenly, the bedroom door was thrown open. My dad walked in, holding his phone, his whole body trembling as he stared at my mom. "What are you freaking out about now?" my mom snapped, glaring at him. My dad just shakily put the phone on speaker. Leo's frantic voice immediately filled the room. "Auntie, Ava's been in a car accident." I watched as my parents hailed a cab on the dark street. They had rushed out in such a panic that they didn't even put on shoes. Their thin pajamas offered no protection against the chilly autumn night. Fortunately, they found a cab quickly and went to the police station in the next town, following the address Leo had sent. The officer in charge of the accident was a young man. The first thing he said when he saw my parents was, "Are you Ava Jiang's parents? Why did you both have her number blocked?" My mother was gasping for breath, unable to speak. It was my father who reacted first. "Officer, where is our daughter, Ava? Can you take us to see her first?" The officer checked their information, then gave them a surprised look, a hint of pity in his eyes. Finally, he said, "Come with me." He led them to his car. My mother remained silent the whole time, while my father anxiously asked, "Officer, where are you taking us?" At that moment, my mother's lips moved unconsciously. "My daughter, is she in the hospital? Is she badly hurt?" She hadn't called me that in a long time. The words came out haltingly, the simple phrase, "my daughter," like a tongue twister that she could barely articulate. The officer didn't say anything more. Not until the car pulled up in front of the city morgue. My mother suddenly let out a terrified shriek, clinging to the car door and refusing to get out. "Why did you bring me here? I want to go to the hospital. My daughter is in the hospital." My dad was too stunned to deal with my mom. He stared in disbelief at the sign above the building, then cautiously asked the officer, "Sir, are you sure you brought us to the right place?" The young officer adjusted his cap. He seemed new to this kind of situation, looking a bit lost, but he finally spoke. "Your daughter was in an accident on the highway. I'm sorry, but she didn't make it. Please accept my condolences." When they went inside, Leo was already there. He was the first one to receive the news of my death, probably because he was one of the few contacts in my phone with a little heart emoji next to his name. He had been staring blankly at a body covered by a white sheet. When he saw my parents walk in, he broke down, rushing over to grab my mother's arm and screaming, "Ava's last call was to you. What did you say to her?" The paramedics at the scene said, based on the timeline, she was still alive when she answered the phone. After the call, she completely lost the will to live. They couldn't save her. What did you say to her? My mother was like a puppet on strings, unresponsive even as Leo shook her back and forth. It wasn't until my father suddenly understood, his voice heavy as he asked, "Did you tell her to go die?" Those words finally got a reaction from my mother. With a strength that came from nowhere, she pushed Leo away and ran to the gurney, violently pulling back the white sheet. And there was my body, completely exposed. This was the first time I had seen myself dead. It wasn't a pretty sight. In fact, it was kind of ugly. The wounds on my face had been cleaned, but my deformed forehead and broken nose made my already unremarkable face look even stranger. Not to mention my arms were missing. There was a major explosion after the crash. Miss Jiang's arms were too badly damaged. They couldn't be reattached, the young officer explained before stepping out. My mother stared at my face, wanting to reach out and touch it, but she didn't dare. Her hand hovered in the air, slowly clenching into a fist before she slammed it against her own chest. I must be dreaming. This can't be real. She can't be dead. My Ava can't be dead, I heard my mother muttering to herself. The color had drained from her face while they were waiting for the cab, and now she was almost as pale as I was. With every beat against her chest, she would close her eyes, count to 3, and then open them again. She repeated this 7 times, and every time she still saw my corpse, motionless. The more she did this, the less I understood. Didn't I die just as she wanted? So who is she putting on this painful show for now? My body had been lying here for 3 days. When the morgue staff came in to take me for cremation, my mother clung to my body like a mother hen protecting her chick, refusing to budge. Ava's just sleeping. She'll wake up when the sun rises. I'll call her. I have to take her to school. It's getting cold. I've already knitted her a scarf. She won't be cold on her way to school if she wears it. I suddenly remembered middle school. Chloe complained that store-bought scarves were too scratchy and begged my mother to knit one for her by hand. My mother didn't know how to knit, but she never refused any of Chloe's requests. So she went out and bought pure wool yarn and knitting needles and painstakingly learned, stitch by stitch. After several sleepless nights, the scarf was finally finished. The day Chloe wore that scarf to school, I was consumed with jealousy. She already had a new coat, scarf, gloves, and earmuffs that my mother had bought for her, while I had nothing. I was always stuck wearing her old hand-me-downs, the cotton filling so thin it felt like paper. On my way to school, the wind would cut right through me, making my whole body ache with cold. I wanted that scarf so badly. The one my mother had knitted with her own hands. It must be so warm, so soft. Maybe it even smelled like her. I knew that if I asked my mother to knit one for me, she would definitely refuse. So, one day before school, I secretly took the scarf. My plan was simple. I would just wear it for one day. Just one day, and I would give it back to Chloe tomorrow. She had so many scarves, she probably wouldn't even notice this one was missing. But for some reason, Chloe didn't wear a scarf to school that day and came home with a cold and a fever. The fever was severe and didn't break all night. My mother stayed up with her and finally, in the early morning, took her to the hospital. That's when they found out she had leukemia. Unsurprisingly, I was severely beaten by my mother and locked in the bathroom. My parents stayed at the hospital with Chloe for 3 days and 3 nights, and I was locked in that bathroom for 3 days and 3 nights. At least it was the bathroom. When I was hungry, I could drink water. And so, in the early winter, I survived by drinking tap water every day. When my dad came back for me, I had completely collapsed from exhaustion. He rushed me to the hospital. Lying in the hospital bed, I asked my dad, "Where's Mom?" He didn't say anything. Later, I passed out, but in my sleep, I kept calling for Mom. When I woke up, she was standing by my bed, but her gaze was icy cold. She asked me, "Why didn't you die?" My dad was standing at the door smoking. He heard her and rushed over to cover her mouth. But she wouldn't be silenced, relentlessly asking me, "Ava Jiang, why don't you just die? Why wasn't it you who got leukemia? It should have been you who died." I cried until I couldn't breathe. Back then, I couldn't understand why my own mother wanted me to die. Later, I understood. Her family had died, and she needed someone to bear her pain and anger. And I, at that time, neither fought back nor defended myself. I was the natural choice. So, even though she knew how much I wanted a scarf, she never gave me one. The morgue staff didn't dare to use force. At that moment, my dad walked up to my mom, his aged eyes filled with exhaustion. "Ava is already dead, just like you wanted. Can't you even let her rest in peace?" I never knew that a person, when burned to ashes, becomes such a small pile. It seemed like you could hold it all in one hand. My mother reached out to take the urn, but Leo, who had been standing silently to the side, snatched it first. My mother desperately tried to grab it back, but Leo was tall and strong. He used his height advantage to hold my urn tightly in his arms. "You couldn't take care of her when she was alive, and you can't now that she's dead. I don't think Ava would want to go home with a murderer like you. You killed your own daughter with your own hands." Leo's shouts grew louder. My mother was pushed to the ground, her newly sprouted white hair hanging messily by her temples. She looked pitiful and tragic. My dad was clearly stunned by Leo's voice, standing motionless to the side. For the first time in a long while, I saw in Leo's eyes the same love he had shown me when he first confessed his feelings. I was even a little confused. I thought he was supposed to like Chloe more. After all, later on, whenever we were on a date and Chloe called, he would always answer immediately and talk for an hour, as if he had completely forgotten his girlfriend was standing nearby. Usually, I would wait in silence for him to finish. But once, we went to see a popular romance movie. The opening credits had just finished when he stepped out to take another call from Chloe. I watched almost the entire 2-hour movie by myself. When I walked out of the theater, I heard him still on the phone, saying, "I'll come see you next weekend, don't be sad." But next weekend, he had promised to take me strawberry picking. I rushed over, snatched his phone, and hung up. Then I told him firmly, "You're not going." A flicker of shock crossed Leo's face, followed by anger. "What kind of tantrum are you throwing?" I thought I was just stopping my boyfriend from going to be with another woman, but I regretted it instantly. I had finally found Leo. What if he left me? I wanted to apologize, but Leo spoke first, his voice cold. "You just can't stand to see Chloe happy, can you? She's your cousin. You refuse to go see her, so you have to stop others from being good to her too." I stammered, "You're my boyfriend. I just don't want my boyfriend spending time with someone else." Leo sneered at me. "You still remember I'm your boyfriend? Then why did you walk out when I took you to see that apartment yesterday? Do you have any idea how many strings my parents pulled to get us that insider deal?" My confidence dwindled even further. I unconsciously twisted the hem of my shirt. I don't have the money right now." Leo's gaze turned even colder. "Is that so? Whatever." After that argument, we never had a proper conversation again, until my car accident. Was it only because I was dead that he realized my worth? Leo left without a second thought. Even with my mother wailing behind him, he didn't hesitate for a moment. But my mother quickly stopped chasing him. Her phone was ringing. It was Chloe. In that moment, I saw pain in my mother's eyes. The phone rang for a long time, but she never picked it up. Chloe wasn't discouraged. A moment later, she called again. This time, my dad came over and answered for my mom. He put it on speaker, and Chloe's voice came through. "Auntie, I found a way to raise the money." The new fundraising method Chloe mentioned involved my mother donating a kidney to someone else in exchange for a large nutrition fee. It took me forever to find someone who's a perfect match for Auntie's kidney. She explained excitedly to my parents, who had rushed to the hospital. Her face was full of joy and pride, as if donating a kidney was no different from plucking a hair. In fact, that's exactly what she thought. So when she saw my mother's prolonged silence, she suddenly became furious. "Auntie, didn't you say you would do anything to raise the money for my transplant? It's just one kidney, what's there to hesitate about?" Is my life not as important as one of your kidneys? How can you do this? What would my dead parents think? I saw my mother's head snap up, her eyes filled with disbelief. But when she heard that last sentence, the guilt in her eyes slowly resurfaced. My dad quickly stepped in to mediate. We just got the news about Ava's death. Your aunt hasn't had time to process it. Don't be angry. You know how much she dotes on you. How could she ever abandon you? The negotiation ended on a sour note. I watched them walk home in complete silence. The moment they opened the door, my mother suddenly asked, "Does Chloe know that Ava is dead?" My dad nodded as he took off his shoes. My mother froze for a second, then her face filled with confusion. Then, why isn't she sad at all? Isn't Ava her cousin? In the hospital just now, when my dad delivered the news of my death, Chloe had only shown a brief moment of surprise before quickly steering the conversation back to the kidney donation. It was as if she had just heard a piece of trivial news. My dad's hands paused. I could see he wanted to say something, but after a long silence, he just let out a deep sigh. My mother didn't press further. She walked hunched over into the bedroom, picked up the photo frame from the corner of the wardrobe, and curled up with it on the bed. She lay there for a while, then started rummaging through the wardrobe, searching for something. My dad had been smoking on the balcony, but the commotion she was making got on his nerves. "What are you looking for?" "Ava's clothes. I remember I bought her a beautiful little pink dress. Why can't I find it?" My dad stubbed out his cigarette, his expression complicated as he stared at my mom. "Chloe used to like playing with dolls back then, don't you remember? You cut up that dress to make new clothes for her dolls." As he spoke, he seemed to remember something else, and he pinched the bridge of his nose in pain. "Ava cried for a long time over that. I promised I'd buy her another one, but you said no, that we didn't have the money." I remembered that incident too. It wasn't just the pink dress. Chloe ended up cutting all of my dresses to shreds. Those shattered, sparkling pieces of fabric never made it onto her dolls. They were thrown into the trash with disgust by Chloe. My mother stared blankly for a long while. Later, in a rare turn of events, she didn't go to the hospital for the entire day. She just stayed home, searching and searching, constantly muttering to herself, "Where did all of Ava's things go? Why is there nothing left?" Of course, there was nothing. I had very few things. My bed was the living room sofa. In school, I almost never wore anything other than my uniform. My school supplies were borrowed from my desk mate in exchange for doing his homework. I didn't even have my own backpack until I graduated high school. My mother hated me, and she was stingy about spending any money on me. The fact that she even let me continue my education felt like a miracle. I was like a lodger in this house. I had no room, no place, and no one who loved me. So I left nothing behind. As my mother searched, she suddenly broke down into loud sobs. I leaned in to observe her expression closely. It seemed I could really see a glimmer of longing and remorse for me. But now, such a minuscule amount of remorse was no longer enough to move me in the slightest. Chloe started calling frequently. My mother never answered. Finally, my dad, exasperated, took the phone and picked up. On the other end, Chloe would cry about how her health was getting worse, how she couldn't sleep at night, and how the hospital food was inedible. "Is Auntie abandoning me?" Chloe's heartbroken sobs, even transmitted through the ether, were enough to make anyone's heart ache. In the past, the moment Chloe cried, my mother would have rushed to the hospital like the wind. But now, she just listened with a blank expression, her eyes wandering aimlessly around the room. She was always looking for my things. Even though she had turned the entire house upside down, and even though my dad had confirmed countless times that there was nothing of mine left, she kept searching. She searched every day, almost as a habit. My dad wearily comforted the inconsolable Chloe on the phone, while also trying to make sure my mother wouldn't flip over the coffee table again. The call, naturally, did not go well. At least, not for Chloe. For the next few days, Chloe stopped calling. Just when I thought things were finally calming down, the unexpected happened. My parents were being doxxed and harassed online. It started with a video Chloe posted. In it, she talked about how she had finally found a matching bone marrow donor, but was being prevented from having the surgery by her family. Her words were vague, but uninformed netizens were quickly riled up. Based on clues from Chloe's daily posts, they soon found the apartment my parents were renting. They started leaving funeral wreaths at the door, throwing feces, and banging on the door in the middle of the night. It got so bad that the landlord demanded my parents move out immediately. My mother had no choice. She was no longer young and didn't know how to defend herself online. She could only go to the hospital to find Chloe. Chloe looked at her innocently, claiming she had no idea how things had gotten so out of hand. "Auntie, the only way to calm the netizens down now is for me to have the surgery right away. Once they see I'm recovering, they'll stop bothering you. You know how crazy these people online are. Today they're banging on your door, who knows what they'll be smashing tomorrow." My mother was terrified. She stood in the hospital corridor, discussing it with my dad. In just 10 minutes, my dad smoked half a pack of cigarettes. "Maybe you should just donate it," I asked the doctor. "People have 2 kidneys, donating one doesn't really affect you. Besides, if these people online keep this up, we're both going to end up dead. Isn't Chloe the child you dote on the most? Ava's gone. She's all we have left." Chloe had said that too, on the day she learned of my death. Through her tears, she had said, "Ava's gone. If I don't get better, who will take care of you in your old age?" After hearing my dad, my mother sat on a bench in the hospital corridor for the entire afternoon. She covered her face with her hands, but I could still see the endless tears streaming through her fingers. In the end, she chose to sign the organ donation consent form. The kidney removal surgery went smoothly. Almost at the same moment my mother was wheeled out of the operating room, Chloe successfully underwent her bone marrow transplant. The nutrition fee barely covered Chloe's surgery costs, leaving no money for a caregiver. After some discussion, my dad resigned from his job to take care of them both, running back and forth day and night. Fortunately, the compensation for my car accident finally came through, $200,000. I had been in a hurry that day and took an unlicensed cab, so I hadn't bought any insurance. The payout wasn't much. My dad didn't have the energy to fight for more. The day he received the money, he even tried to comfort my mom. "At least it's more than 15 years ago." At his words, my mother's cloudy eyes shifted, and she finally covered them in pain. I was getting tired of this, always following their lives. I was already dead, why did I still have to revolve around them? When would this all end? In that brief moment of distraction, my father collapsed heavily onto the floor. He had gone home to get a change of clothes. Just as he was about to leave, he suddenly fainted. The bag of clothes in his hand flew onto the glass coffee table. The glass shattered with a loud crash. The noise was loud enough to attract the next-door neighbor. My father was rushed to the hospital, unconscious. He was in the emergency room for a full day and night. My mother, despite her weakened state, waited outside the operating room. Her eyes were terrifyingly red, and she looked like she could collapse at any moment. She was old and had just undergone major surgery. The doctors and nurses around her all urged her to go back to her room and rest, but she acted as if she couldn't hear them, stubbornly standing guard at the door. When she got tired of standing, she would sit on the bench, pull out a photograph from her pocket, and gently trace my face. I saw her lips move slightly, as if she were saying something. If this had been when I first became a spirit, I would have floated over with interest to listen. But now I just watched from a distance. I wanted to be farther away from them, much farther. I wanted to leave them completely. The 24-hour surgery finally ended, but Chloe never once appeared. My mother called her twice, but the calls didn't connect. I saw her immediately grow tense, her lips moving without a sound. "Chloe, did something happen to her?" Then she took off, running towards Chloe's hospital room. How ironic. The day of my accident, my mother had also called me. In those 2 long minutes, she never once worried that something might have happened to me. My mother, gasping for breath, reached the hospital room, only to see 2 nurses cleaning the bed. There was no one else in the room. My mother asked cautiously, "Where did the patient who was staying here go?" She was discharged this morning, about 2 or 3 hours ago. My mother lost her balance and crumpled to the floor. Chloe had been discharged without telling my parents. Her intentions couldn't be clearer. She, like me, must have desperately wanted to leave them. But why? She was the child they had cherished like a precious jewel. My mother forced herself to get up and go back to my father's side. Fresh out of surgery, my dad was still very weak. Although he was conscious, his eyelids drooped, as if he didn't have the strength to open them. I saw his mouth moving, as if he were asking, why didn't Chloe come? She was supposed to be there, just as she had promised, to take my place and care for them. Just then, a nurse walked in. She placed a bill on the small table by the bed. The family needs to go pay this as soon as possible. My mother stood up again, like a zombie. At this time of day, the payment window was empty. My mother handed over her bank card, but it was returned to her a moment later. There's no money on this card. You need to use a different one. My mother listened in stunned silence to the cashier, then picked up the card and checked it several times before timidly speaking. "Ma'am, that's impossible. This card has my daughter's accident compensation in it. A full $200,000, how can there be no money?" Perhaps seeing my mother's frail, trembling body and her empty hospital gown, the clerk's face softened with sympathy. After a moment, she took the card back. "Let me check for you." Those were a long 2 minutes. My mother stood there, swallowing repeatedly, her hands gripping the bars of the window so tightly her knuckles turned white. Then she heard the clerk say, "I checked for you. All the money on this card was transferred out an hour ago." When my mother returned to my father's room, she was surprised to see someone there. Leo looked much older. A man who was always so clean-shaven now had a face full of stubble. Seeing the fresh fruit by the bedside, my mother belatedly thought to offer him a seat, but Leo just waved his hand wearily. "I came to tell you something. 15 years ago, the primary cause of Chloe's parents' car accident was drunk driving." Hearing Leo's words, my head buzzed. My mother staggered backward in disbelief until she hit the wall. "Impossible, impossible," Leo seemed to have anticipated her reaction. He pulled a folded piece of paper from his pocket. It was a copy of the accident report from back then. It clearly stated the cause of the accident: driver, Anthony Shen, driving under the influence. "I found this by accident while I was investigating Ava's crash. 15 years ago, same stretch of road in an adjacent case file." My mother's cries became more frantic. How could this be? It was my mother who handled the accident back then. She told me it was all Ava's fault. She never mentioned drunk driving. Leo listened, his eyes welling up with tears. "She never told you, and you never once bothered to investigate the truth for your own daughter, did you? You let her carry that heavy burden and even vented all your hatred on her without a second thought. You probably never considered that Ava was your daughter. And that compensation money. Ava was in a hurry to get back and trying to save money, so she took an unlicensed cab. There shouldn't have been any compensation. But a long time ago, she secretly bought a very cheap insurance policy for herself. The beneficiary was you. I did buy a policy like that. I was walking down the street one day when a young girl, probably a student working part-time, grabbed my hand and begged me to help her meet her quota. She said she had been working for 2 weeks without a single sale, and if she didn't make one soon, she wouldn't have enough money for her tuition. I took the flyer from her hand and glanced at it. The policy wasn't expensive, only $199. Seeing the girl's tear-filled eyes and her desperate pleas, I was reminded of my former self, trapped in the same predicament, struggling to climb out with no one to help. So I paid without hesitation. It was only when filling out the beneficiary information that I paused. The girl quietly suggested, "Usually people put a family member, like their dad or mom." I hesitated for a moment, and then, as if possessed, I wrote my mother's name on the form. So that was where the $200,000 came from. My mother broke down into hysterical sobs, crying so hard she could barely breathe. Seeing her like this, Leo ran a hand through his hair in frustration. "What good is crying now? You called Ava a murderer for 15 years, and you never once said you were sorry you're the real murderer. You killed Ava with your own hands, you killed your own daughter. I heard my mother's crying gradually subside. The sunlight bleached her tears, and combined with her bloodless face, she looked exceptionally tragic. I watched her pick up the photograph, stroking it over and over, but she said nothing. How could my mother ever admit she was wrong? I couldn't help but find the flicker of hope I had just felt a moment ago laughable. My mother wiped away her tears and looked up at Leo. "Can I ask you to do me a favor?" My mother asked Leo to call Chloe for her. This time, the call connected quickly. Chloe's cheerful voice came through the speaker. "Leo, you haven't answered my calls in so long. I thought you were ignoring me." But it was my mother's voice that answered her. "Chloe, did you take the 200,000? There was a long silence on the other end before she finally spoke. "Auntie, I'm very busy. Don't just grab Leo's phone and harass me." It was a tacit admission. It wasn't hard to guess. My mother had never been guarded with Chloe. Chloe knew all her account passwords. Transferring the money from the bank card would have been effortless. My mother fought back tears and pleaded into the phone, "Your uncle is sick. He needs that money urgently. Can you please give it back to me?" I heard Chloe let out a scoff, followed by a non sequitur. I knew it. Then it sounded like Chloe angrily threw something. The sound of shattering came through the receiver, sharp and jarring. "I knew it if I didn't transfer the money. You wouldn't have left a single penny for me. I'm a patient too. I just had surgery. I need a lot of money. How can you only care about your husband and not me? Are you just going to stand by and watch me die?" My mother quickly explained, "I'm not asking for all of it back. Just give me half, or even 50,000 would be enough. This money is from Ava Jiang's compensation, right? This is what she owed me. Isn't that what you always said? Her money is my money, because this is what she owes me." My mother seemed to be stabbed in the heart by Chloe's words, and her anger erupted uncontrollably. "Ava doesn't owe you anything. Your dad's accident was because of drunk driving. It had nothing to do with Ava." I expected Chloe to be shocked, stunned, or at least a little uneasy. But she showed none of that. She accepted the news with complete composure and retorted coldly, "So what? If it wasn't for her birthday party, would my dad have been drinking and driving? She owes me. Your whole family owes me." Chloe was far too calm, as if she had known the truth all along. After saying her piece, she hung up angrily. My mother stood there, holding the phone, and then slid down the wall to the floor, sobbing inconsolably. Between her cries, she called out my name. "Ava, my Ava." My father was eventually brought home by my mother because they couldn't pay the medical bills. By the time they got home, his condition had deteriorated significantly. I could vaguely see the signs of death on him. He was unconscious most of the time, with maybe an hour a day when he had some awareness. Whenever he was conscious, he would ask my mother, "Where's Chloe? Why haven't I seen her?" My dad still didn't know about the despicable things Chloe had done. He was only thinking about the one relative he thought he could rely on for his old age, wondering why she hadn't come to see him even once. At times like these, my mother could only remain silent. As my dad spoke, his consciousness would fade again, and he would start talking about me. "If only Ava were here. If only Ava were here." The landlord came by several times to demand the rent, his expression turning particularly sour when he saw my father's dying state. My mother was on the verge of kneeling and begging, "Please, just give me a few more days. My husband is in this condition, we have nowhere else to go." The landlord shot my mother a disgusted look. "Don't you have another daughter? Why don't you ask her for some money? What's your daughter's name again?" The landlord thought for a moment. "Chloe, your daughter's name is Chloe, right? I've seen her. Didn't you spend a lot of money on her? Even got her a bone marrow transplant. You treat your daughter so well, she wouldn't just abandon you, would she?" My mother's face flushed with panic and urgency. "No, that's not right. My daughter is Ava. Chloe isn't my daughter, she's just my niece." The landlord was completely out of patience. "I don't care if she's Ava or Chloe. Just get her to send you some money. Can't you see your husband is about to?" She cut herself off. As the landlord left, I heard her muttering, "Treating someone else's kid so well, emptying out their life savings for a transplant. That's just crazy. The extension the landlord gave wasn't long. My mother pushed herself up from the floor and, after catching her breath, went downstairs to the corner store to make a call. For several days now, she had been going down to make 3 or 4 calls a day, all to Chloe. Unfortunately, Chloe never answered. So she tried different methods, sometimes using the payphone at the store, sometimes borrowing a phone from a passerby. Now, with her white hair and frail, gaunt figure, almost everyone felt sympathy for her. So she was usually successful in borrowing a phone. Just when she thought Chloe would never pick up, this time, the call actually connected. Chloe's lazy, annoyed voice came through. "Who is this? Can you stop with the spam calls? It's so annoying." Hearing her voice, my mother immediately composed herself and said gently, "Chloe, it's Auntie." Chloe paused for a second, about to hang up, when my mother's voice came again. "Your uncle passed away. The community gave us some funeral assistance money. I was thinking, your body is still weak, so why don't you take this money?" The line was still open, but Chloe didn't speak for a long time. After a while, she asked hesitantly, "Are you serious?" My mother let out a soft sob. "Chloe, you're all I have now. I'll give you all the money. I just hope you'll come back and take care of me for a little while." Chloe finally let her guard down, her tones softening considerably. "Auntie, you're my only family left. How could I ever abandon you? Auntie, you wait at home. I'll be back tomorrow." She said she would be back the next day, but Chloe actually knocked on our door that very night. She was dressed beautifully, with exquisite makeup and clothes that looked very expensive, a stark contrast to the old, dilapidated apartment. It was clear she really wanted the money. The moment she walked in, she grabbed my mother's hand. "Auntie, where's the money?" My mother poured her a cup of hot tea and even blew on it carefully, just as attentive as she had always been. "It's so cold out. Have some hot tea to warm up first." Saying that, she poured a cup for herself as well and slowly drank it. Chloe was anxious and hesitant, but after seeing my mother drink her tea, she patiently drank hers too. She slammed the cup down on the table. I drank it. "Now give me the money." My mother calmly pulled a bank card from her pocket. "It's all in here." Chloe snatched the card and was about to leave, but my mother blocked the door. "Chloe, didn't you promise you would take care of me?" Chloe's face was full of impatience. "I'll come see you once a month." My mother still wouldn't move, just stubbornly asking, "Chloe, I took care of you for 15 years. You're not even willing to stay here and keep me company for a few days. You were supposed to take care of me, I'm your niece. Who else would you take care of? That murderer daughter of yours? Does she deserve it? Your whole family owes me, and you can never repay it, you said that yourself." Every one of Chloe's words made my mother's face grow paler. But she wasn't wrong. My mother was the one who first called me a murderer, and it was she who told Chloe, over and over, that our family owed her a debt that could never be repaid. I believed it. Chloe believed it. Her brainwashing was so successful, she should have been happy, but there was no joy on my mother's face. She cried with heartbreaking sorrow, muttering, "Retribution. This is all my retribution." Chloe couldn't be bothered with her and tried to push past to open the door. My mother stood in her way, her frail body managing to push Chloe back half a step. "Are you crazy?" Chloe yelled, trying to pry my mother's hand off the doorknob. But my mother, with some unknown strength, didn't move an inch, just kept repeating, "You can't leave." Not now. Chloe completely lost her patience. She was about to kick, but as soon as she lifted her leg, her whole body went limp, and she collapsed to the floor, blood spilling from the corners of her mouth. The same thing was happening to my mother, but she managed to grab onto the doorframe to keep from falling. It was then I realized my mother must have put something in the tea. Chloe had the same thought. She desperately tried to reach the doorknob but couldn't even stand. She fumbled for her phone in her purse, about to call 911 when my mother slapped it out of her hand. The phone skittered under the sofa, out of reach. Chloe was helpless. She let out a desperate cry, but the sound was barely a whisper. Instead, more blood flowed endlessly from her body. My mother ignored her, using her last bit of strength to crawl into the bedroom and grab my father's hand. Then she pulled the photo of us from her pocket. Her blood-stained lips kissed my forehead on the picture, and she whispered, "Ava, I'm sorry." In that moment, I felt a sense of release. Those 3 simple words made my soul feel lighter and lighter, as if I could break through the concrete and steal and fly up to the sky. I suddenly saw my mother reach out joyfully in my direction. It was as if she could see me. Her cloudy eyes shone with a terrifying brightness. Though she could no longer speak, I could read her lips as she called my name. "Ava, my Ava," she tried to grab me. A tear slid down her cheek, hit the floor, and was quickly lost in the dust. But I didn't spare her another glance. I had her apology, and the grudge I had held in my heart for so many years was finally gone. Now, I could finally be free of her, and I would not look back. I met Ava Jiang at a company mixer. The women in the big city were all very into dressing up. They wore exquisite makeup, pretty dresses, and chatted confidently with the men around them, their laughter like silver bells, their eyes filled with undisguised ambition and desire. And then there was Ava. A drab gray hoodie, jeans, and a pair of washed-out canvas sneakers. She was huddled timidly in a corner, sipping from a cup of water. She was different. Shy and stubborn, timid yet resilient. I spotted this unusual girl in the crowd right away. But she kept her head down the whole time, as if the surrounding noise and chaos had nothing to do with her. I wanted to say hello, but I couldn't find an opening. She really didn't look like the type to enjoy talking to strangers. So I just kept circling around her. I had to find a reason to talk to her, I thought. Otherwise, what was the point of coming tonight? Thankfully, fate intervened. The opportunity came, suddenly and forcefully. Ava Jiang fell right into my arms. Her eyes were like a fawn's, blinking, her face flushed a faint pink. A round of laughter erupted around us. See, that's why they say Leo so handsome girls are literally throwing themselves at him. I clearly saw her open her mouth to explain, but for some reason, her face just turned redder, and no sound came out. So I dispersed the onlookers and gently steadied her. It was strange. She was tall, but so light, like I could lift her with one hand. Especially when she heard the others teasing, she was so shy she looked like she wanted the ground to swallow her whole. I felt truly blessed by the heavens. I naturally exchanged contact information with her, but she never once reached out to me. It was strange. My usual charm seemed to have no effect on her. I had to be the one to initiate conversation again and again. But her replies were always short. "Okay. Really? I see." It got to the point where I was running out of things to say. It was the first time I realized that making conversation could be so draining, but I still managed to ask her out. She was very nervous, still quiet and reserved. I asked her what she liked to eat. She said, "Anything's fine." I was completely at a loss. Then I remembered the mixer, how she had wolfed down the chocolate bar I gave her. At least I knew she liked chocolate, I thought. So every time we parted, I would give her a chocolate bar. She would always tuck it away carefully, say goodbye, and then leave without a backward glance. I seriously began to wonder if I could ever win her over. Maybe she just wasn't into guys like me. That New Year's Eve was my last chance. I was going to confess. If it didn't work out, I would give up. That night, I gave her a little deer antler headband. Ava thought she wasn't pretty, so she didn't like to wear flashy accessories. I had to coax her for a long time to finally put it on. But the truth is, she was beautiful, an unconscious kind of beautiful. I stood with her in the middle of the crowd, counting down to the new year together. 3, 2, 1. On the last number, I heard her whisper to herself, "Leo, I want to be with you forever." Her voice was so soft, I was lucky to have heard it, but the blood in my veins felt like it was boiling. The crowd around us was loud and festive, with excited couples kissing on the spot. Ava kept her head down, following a step behind me, showing no intention of explaining what she had just said. I suddenly realized she hadn't meant for me to hear, but I had, so I stopped walking abruptly. As I hoped, Ava bumped right into my chest. I told her I had heard. I had heard her New Year's wish, to be with Leo forever. Her face turned beet red. I knew she was just saying it to herself. She probably never intended to tell me. She might have even hoped her voice would be drowned out by the noisy crowd. But I heard it, I leaned closer to Ava's head, trying my best to suppress my joy and excitement, and asked in the gentlest voice I could manage, "You're not lying to me, are you?" Ava instinctively shook her head, and I pulled her into a tight embrace. I felt like I was holding the entire world. I gently rubbed my chin against the top of her head. "I've never met a girl like you. If I don't contact you, you never contact me. I really thought you didn't like me at all." I poured out all my insecurities and frustrations, begging for a little affection like a puppy. Ava had the softest heart. She couldn't possibly refuse me. Sure enough, she swallowed hard and stammered, I'm not." That night, my confession was a success. Ava Jiang became my girlfriend. I went home with her to meet her parents. It was strange. Her parents weren't close to her at all. Instead, they doted on her cousin, Chloe. Her mother even told me, in not-so-subtle ways, "Ava Jiang is not what she seems. She's a terrible person." I didn't know what Ava had done to make her own mother despise her so much. But I couldn't help but be influenced by her mother's words. Was Ava really that bad of a person? Otherwise, why would even her own mother not love her? At the hospital, I saw Chloe. She looked very weak, but she had a pair of eyes that were strikingly similar to Ava's. The moment she fell into my arms, I could hardly tell who my Ava was. Chloe and Ava were like two extremes. Although Chloe was sick, she looked like she had been well cared for and pampered. She was talkative and lively. A conversation with her would never go cold. Ava was perfectly healthy. I had almost never seen her go to the hospital. But she was gloomy and withdrawn, like a weed growing wild in a field. She had a strong will to live but seemed to push away everything around her, including me. I really wanted to marry Ava. I took her to look at apartments several times. I hoped we could buy a place of our own, where just the two of us would live, with no one to bother us. I would be the one to cherish her, to help her change her bad habits. Maybe then she could be accepted by her mother again, but Ava refused. She always said she had no money. How was that possible? Back then, I could never figure it out. She had been working for several years. How could she not have any savings? I wasn't even asking her to pay the down payment, just to split the mortgage with me. But she still refused. She said she had no money. I was furious, and Chloe was calling frequently. I used my calls with Chloe as a way to numb my own mind. I told myself I just needed to be more patient, that Ava hadn't fully accepted me yet. But the doubt and suspicion in my heart grew deeper. Why wouldn't Ava buy a place with me? Had she fallen for someone else? The more I thought about it, the angrier I got. I even dragged her through dozens of department stores and spent 2 months' salary on a tiara for Chloe. I wanted to see if she would get angry, but she didn't. She wasn't angry at all. In fact, she even helped me pick it out. In that moment, I truly believed she didn't love me, that all my beautiful dreams about us were just an illusion. I left her to go celebrate Chloe's birthday. That was the most ridiculous, most wrong decision I have ever made. Because of that decision, I lost Ava forever. I screamed at Ava's mother in the morgue to vent my anger. But I knew, deep down, that I was one of the daggers that killed her. I held her urn, unable to sleep night after night. I kept dreaming of when we first met, of our first kiss, of our first fight. One night, I knocked on the door of Ava's landlord and begged her to let me take Ava's belongings. In Ava's room, I found a tin box. For some reason, I was afraid to open it, but I finally did. Inside was a box full of chocolate bars, all the ones I had given her. She hadn't eaten a single one. She had treasured them all. I remembered how frugal she always was. She always took home leftovers from restaurants, but she couldn't bear to eat the chocolate bars I gave her. She hid them so well that I never saw them. I also found a pile of small notes hidden in the box. "Leo is so good to me. I wish I could be with Leo forever and ever. Will Leo marry me? I want to marry Leo. Then I'll have a baby with Leo. Maybe two. Of course, we have to have a daughter. I'll love her with everything I have, and Leo has to love her too. That way, my daughter will be the happiest little girl in the world." How could I have been so blind to how much my Ava loved me? She had said she wanted to be with me forever. How could I not have believed her? My Ava would never lie. I found the truth in the accident report, the truth about how Ava had been wrongly accused all these years. I couldn't wait to tell her parents. But when I saw them, I realized the truth no longer mattered. They had lost the vitality they had when I first met them. They were old, their eyes cloudy. So old that regret was useless. I had wanted to get justice for Ava. But I forgot Ava was already dead. She didn't care about justice. And besides, I wasn't worthy of getting it for her. I failed her. I failed the girl I loved most. For the rest of my life, I will probably be steeped in regret and despair. I can never get my Ava back.